for listening to episode 124 of Mitolife Radio. I'm your host, Matt Blackburn, and today I have Charles Barber of Crucial 4 returning to the podcast. Charles actually has a farm out in Texas where he's been using some pretty advanced methods for growing produce. He talks about the bacteria in the soil, soil amendments, composting, really advanced composting methods, testing conductivity in the soil, many other things. It was really fun to talk with them about this as we're getting ready to put up a geodesic dome greenhouse. It's cool to pick someone's brain that's already been doing it. And it really seems unlimited to what you can do. It does really come down to basics, but at the same time, I think using filtered water and protecting the plants from acid rain helps. And the more of these things you stack, the healthier food you're going to grow. So let's just jump into the show. Here is Charles Barber. All right, Charles Barber, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to share your wisdom on herbs and farming. And it's really cool to watch your social media stuff, what you're doing out down there in Texas on the farm with using the microorganisms, indigenous, right? You're making compost, you're even vortexing your compost tea, right? You're doing a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. It's been a journey, and it's always been on the back burner since day one. If I move I don't know if I can get this on camera, but it doesn't matter because no one's gonna be able to see it. But you see that board up here, Matt, that right there. So that's a vision board I created when I got into all of this, right? So that thing's 15, 12, 13 years old. And one of the things on there is superfood farm or farming. My grandpa was a farmer. He got awards from the governor for sustainable farming practices. My uncle's a grass-fed beef farmer. And I've just always felt a calling to get back to the basics with Mother Earth. And then through that journey, really found some elders in the farming space who are like, what I deem like wizards in farming. Like they realized that nutritional density was declining. They always talked about it, and it wasn't, and they were all big on, Albrecht's method and whatnot. But anyways, I don't want to ramble too much. But yeah.
That's awesome.
Farm's cool.
I like to watch YouTube videos and see what's going on. Like I call it like mainstream alternative. And there's like a popular green powder multi-level marketing company out there. A lot of people are promoting. I was just listening to the CEO talk about, organic food and certified organic and all this stuff. And I was just thinking, they're kind of promoting like Whole Foods organic, which is not like, you're not going to buy high quality produce at your grocery store, right?
You can't. It's one thing that I'm a part of is the Real Food Campaign. And basically the objective is to test food so we can create a database for a meter that we're developing that will be in everyone's smartphone. Ideally, it uses spectrometry, so all you need is light, and through that refraction of light, you can analyze polyphenols, antioxidants, specific vitamins in density. So in real time, what would happen is you'd go to the store, you'd go to the farmer's market, you'd see a couple brands of carrots, you'd scan those carrots, and it'd instantly tell you which ones were the most nutrient dense. And when we started doing this testing, we found that, of course, this is kind of controversial here, but we found that even just across the board, what we're being told is that density is declining by a certain percentage. But what we're finding out is that those percentages are so vast in measurement. So, yeah, the big box retailers, they actually tested really low. And this is organics, by the way. This isn't conventional. However, we did find a few conventional farms that tested higher in nutrient density. However, it's all sprayed with chemicals. So then there was that dilemma. And then what we also found was that there was a lot and I hate to say this, but it was just the data showed it. There was a lot of small farms that weren't producing the higher, it was obviously better than organics at Whole Foods or Sprouts or whatever, but it was still subpar. Like it wasn't the best ever. And that was a little discerning, because I was thinking, being a part of this movement and everything that, growing food in your backyard, you really want to push that. We really want to get people out there. We want to support farmers markets. But it's really the quality from a farmer who's in what we call production farming. The quality just isn't there because the amount of compost they have to make, the amount of turning over of beds they have to do. So, for example, they grow a row of lettuce that as soon as that lettuce is done, they're ripping that lettuce out. They're putting more compost or minerals in and putting transplants in. And that's a production farm model. It's just 24/7, go, go, go. And if it's not done correctly, the food actually becomes weaker in what we saw in the testing. So anyways, it's definitely the infancy of this as far as getting the data, but I'm part of it. I'm one of the only ones in Texas that's a part of this. There's another guy in Austin who's a part of it here with me. And Texas is huge, and we've only got like 2 or 3 of us that are a part of this, but it's called the Real Food Campaign. If anyone wants to check that out, one of my elder mentors, Dan Kittredge, is the big proponent and starter of that program. So
that's awesome. I'm sure you've heard me talk about like the water going into the growing process, because how I got into health was with a famous juice guy up in Washington. He was making his juice, and I got into green juicing, and he was talking about the structured water and the living water and the living, vegetable juice. I got all excited, and I think I did get some effect. I think most of that effect was like the hydrogen, the molecular hydrogen, and the enzymes. Thinking back, but how much do you think the water plays in? Because I'd say most people with gardens, like backyard gardens, are just using their hose with tap water, right?
You can't do that. I mean, unless you want to grow a conventional garden, it. And then what does that mean? It means the plants aren't healthy. It means that insects and disease and pest, which people think is okay in organic food, that's what happens. Well, why is that happening? Well, that's nature's way of exiting it out, right? Like saying like, eat that. Insects they can see. So insects see vibration. They can see lower metabolic metabolites. So they can see, but what they can't see is like higher metabolic metabolites. So things like triterpenes or essential oils. So if the plants aren't healthy, they're not producing these hierarchy metabolites, and the pest or insects can see them. They see them now. Now, if the plants are healthy and everything's going well, and then the plants become invisible to these insects. They literally can't physiologically see them through their way that they see. And so, yeah, if you're growing food and water comes up and you're not filtering the water, you're just, it's like antibiotics, right? It's like you're taking doses and doses of you're destroying all the microflora. What we have to understand is that the roots of plants and the biology are in a symbiotic relationship. The bacteria live not around the roots. Yes, they live inside the roots. So they're literally bringing them inside of themselves. And they're not only signaling to what's going on in the dirt as far as nutrition, what's available, EC, electrical conductivity, all these things. They're not only giving that information to the plant is doing this same thing and saying, hey, I need more of this. So there's all of these amazing different reactions happening that we're just now learning about from a lot of these French agronomists that I follow, and talking about like the symbiosis of this relationship. So if you're using a garden hose, the first thing I think of is chlorine and chloramine is destroying that bacteria. But the other thing is the water is extreme, like where I'm at, it's extremely hard. So We're on limestone, and it's got a copious amount of calcium in it. And calcium is actually the number one mineral needed by, humans and plants and whatnot, mainly plants. I have to second that on humans, have to look and see on that. But if you have too much of any of these, you have a discord, a disbalance, and this can cause things to lock out. So water is, I believe, the most important nutrient for plants and humans, for all life. And we definitely have to take massive recourse. And I've looked at doing massive, like commercial grade reverse osmosis system for the house, for the barn, for the gardens. And that is really the only thing we can do right now to effectively get water's TDS down, get the contaminants out low enough, that you won't be causing these issues I mentioned about minerals binding up, destroying bacteria. A lot of people even say that the rainwater where they're at is way too contaminated. And that's not just the acid rain that you talk about. I mean, they're talking about heavy metals and stuff in their rainwater. And so, yeah, it becomes a challenge, for us, since I haven't done the big RO system. What I do is I take indigenous microbes. I do collect rainwater. We have, I don't know how many I have. I think I have like 14 270-gallon tanks. And those are all hooked up. But what we do is we take indigenous microbes and we take quartz crystals and lodestones, and we put it in like a gunny sack. And then that sits in that barrel of rainwater. And this idea came from Dr. Choi's son, who started what's called Jadam, organic farming. And he talked a lot about water quality. He has chapters about it. He shows Emoto's work, and he says, look, the best thing we can do from this Jadam or Korean natural farming standpoint is to use the indigenous microbes to incubate the water, so that you're constantly at least pushing the biology out, even just through, a 15-minute watering. So, there's a solution for ones that maybe don't have the time or money or effort or whatever to build the RO system for their garden. But regardless, you can do this, right? Where you can put microbes and you can collect rainwater. But if you can't do that, you at least have to have a catalytic carbon to get the chlorine and chloramine out at minimum. And then is that enough? Man, I mean, it just depends on your water quality. We're really in an effed up situation with water. I mean, we really are. And if you're going to spend money on anything, spend it on quality water. I mean, you've been such a voice for that for me, because like you, I was a spring water junkie for years, and then just didn't feel right from some of the spring waters, and like how hard they were. And it wasn't until I started purifying and stripping the water and then restructuring it.
There's definitely an energetic quality, right? Like a benefit. Like there's tons of springs around here, and I like sampling them. And all the ones I've tested with my TDS, of course, that's just one set of eyes, right? TDS is just one aspect, but it was like 2 or 3. It was super low. But when I travel and I find a spring, I'll take some sips, but it's just as their regular drinking water, day to day. It's probably
right. Yeah. When I'm traveling and I'm on the road, and it's like, the prana for that energy from that water is probably going to be high. You're lucky where you're at. You really are in a beautiful, it's not the cleanest maybe spot in the world, but I'd say one of the cleanest in the nation as far as water goes. And I guarantee you that low TDS water, if you could get that on some plants, I'm sure when you go to these springs, there's plants growing all around. The diversity is probably intense, which is just a signaler to you that like, hey, the water's at least, it's good enough for the plants, obviously. And so you start there,
Yeah. Well, I just installed, I moved up from the old house, the whole house RO up here. And yeah, like you said, it's just, I mean, it's 6 well, 7 stages, but it's just sediment, carbon, and then DI, and then remin, and then a UV filter. But it's those big blue 20-inch canisters. It's not rocket science. Like people are like,
Right.
well, what filter do I buy? I'm like, you could build it. I mean, it's not that hard to put it together. I mean, there's some specifics, but yeah, and we're really fortunate. It's on a spring, so the whole house is spring fed. So we're filtering spring water.
Nice. So your DI pretty much pulls all your minerals out, and you have 2 of those that you run.
Yeah, just a redundant one in case the first one fails, and
same
to
with
get
the
out the
catalytic.
acids.
Yeah, same with the carbon. You ran 2 of those, and then your remin. That's a remineralizer. Or is that an exchange?
Remineralizer, yeah, to add in some magnesium. Yeah, and magnesium bicarbonate, and yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that one I would be, when we get off here, I'd like to pick your brain on that, on finding that medium. Do you buy the carts on those, the remin? Or are you just refilling those? Or are you buying the actual, do you have to buy the, or is that is that IP that I shouldn't be talking about on the thing? We can talk later if you need to.
Yeah, it's confidential. No, yeah. But yeah, it's funny you were talking about the pests, because we just bought our kitchen. There's a little, I forget the name, window that gets a lot of sun. We got like a basil, tomato plant, lettuce plant, and the basil plant was just getting eaten up by these little gnats. And I took the North American Urban Spice. They have like a bug spray, like essential oils like clove, and I doused it, like I showered it, and then the next day it was all wilted, and I think it's not going to make it. But yeah, it's interesting. We must have got it while it was weak, because I tried to give it our water, and I guess it was too late. But I like what you said about insects and being able to see. I mean, that's how there's articles on bees finding flowers to pollinate, and I think bees see the ultraviolet light, I believe, emitting from the plants.
Yeah. Insects are different. They see differently. They see, it's like a vibration thing. There's a couple books I have behind here on that, but yeah, it's definitely interesting, and it makes sense. It's like when you see organic food at the farmer's market and it's got holes in it, we've come accustomed to that. We've said, oh, okay, it's organic. You want that. Now, if you see one hole and you don't see any more, then that means something bit that and was like, oh, gross, I can't have this. But from what I understand, from what some of my agronomist buddies have told me, is that they physiologically cannot see a healthy plant. They just can't see it, so they're not going to land on it. And that insects are there to decompose dying plants, So if you have some produce there that's got tons of holes in it, those are sick plants. And the crazy thing is like, if you walked out to milk your goat and you saw a big like lesion on the side of your goat, right, you would probably not drink that milk. Like, it's like that quick, right? It's like oh yeah, I wouldn't. Or if it was a chicken, you wouldn't harvest that chicken and eat it. But with plants, we don't really think about it, because it's become the common line, or the common theme around organic food, is that it has bugs in it, right? It's simply not true. It's they're weak plants, and yeah, they probably are weaker minerally wise than some of these conventional, which is sad to say and can be controversial. But I'm here to say that those plants are still sprayed with chemicals, and they're all grown with frack water. Like, we want to talk about water with organics. Holy sheesh. Like that water quality is like, it's just a nightmare, man. Like the type of water they use in organic farming and
biosludge too, right?
Oh, dude, it's tough. I mean, it's tough though too. It's like, it's real easy for us to sit on our high horse and say the quality's bad, and then once you go and meet some of these people, and like, I grew up around farmers, and that's a tough life. I mean, they barely get by. They have tight margins. They bust their ass, work so hard, and it's us consumers that really need to step up and pay for the quality, because that's what it's going to take in order for it to expand and grow, or figure it out for ourselves and at least try to grow enough food for ourselves that we don't have to depend on these other people to grow food for us so much, but
well, it seems like our culture is like consume, right? Like we're always being pushed like that They Live movie, like consumer social media and TV and movies, and there needs to be more of us switching to producing more than consuming.
Create something, make something instead of just constantly consuming everything. There has to be a balance there. And it's funny you say that. It makes me think of this meme I saw where this guy wakes up and it shows like his whole day. He wakes up and looks at his clock made from China, goes and does something with something else from Taiwan, and goes and puts on his shoes from Korea, goes and puts his shirt on from Indonesia. But in the whole pun of the end of it is like, but yet can't find a job in America, wonders why. And it's like we've become accustomed to being, what's a good word? Not entitled, but maybe that is a good word to use. Society has really portrayed this image of what success is, what success looks like. And so we kind of put ourselves on a pedestal and say, oh, like I'm not too good for this job or that job. We definitely need more people in the trades, doing trades like services like plumbing and AC and, and carpentry work and things of this nature. Welding, whatever. But
I need to find a solar guy up here. They're hard to track down.
Yeah. Is there a lot of people doing solar up where you're at, or just not a lot of guys doing it, period?
Yeah, I think they're just swamped. I've been hearing about national shortages recently because we're building our goat fence, and even just T-posts, like 10-foot T-posts.
Yeah.
I bought the last of them at our farm store, and it's like, guns and ammo, obviously. It's like,
right.
People are kind of in freak out mode right now.
They are. I mean, lumber has went through the roof. I was building our smaller greenhouse, or not smaller, actually our bigger one. And like a 2x4 is like $10, whereas in like 2 years ago it was like $2. And I'm just like looking at lumber going up, like you said, the T-post, metal, steel, aluminum, like all these things are shifting in price dramatically and availability. Mm-hmm. I remember last year you couldn't even get a deep freeze in my area for months.
Jeez.
So
yeah, so I'm really fortunate to be fully off grid, because the previous home was partially off grid. Like we had a propane generator, but now there's no electricity coming up here, and I feel really like safe, especially when I beef up my system. It's really, really fortunate. But I want to go back to your point really quick that it's tough for farmers. So it's like drinking water. I always emphasize like do your best, and getting off the high horse and saying do steps. Because at my first apartment, I was going to a water store and filling up 5-gallon jugs, like 40 gallons at a time. And my roommates were drinking from it. And you just stair step, right? And it's a slow progression.
Because it's not going to make sense. All these extra steps that we've given people, that we put out there, you get the new person that comes in and they're instantly overwhelmed. They're instantly asking you 1,000 questions. They're annoying themselves. They're annoying us. And just being honest, don't worry about that, unless you're ready. Like start with something better. Start the trajectory to better water, and then over the years you can now it's like, oh, now I'll get the vitalizer, or now I'll get the vortex, or now I'll go ahead and get the right system or the right filters, But yeah, you got to start with exactly what you were doing. At least go get filtered water. Stop buying the spring water. Get filtered water, and start working with that. Hands down.
Awesome. And another thing I wanted to ask you about, because you touched on acid rain before. I recently learned, Raya actually told me, humus and peat moss actually buffers acids, like from acid rain. Like, because people often ask, I'm sure you get the question, like, what soil should I buy for my garden? And ideally you build it, right? But you can buy peat moss, and that's part of it, maybe.
Yeah, peat is used in a ton of soil mixes. I think a lot of it comes from Canada. I'm pretty far from Canada, unlike you. I think it's a phenomenal resource for you. You're pretty close. And maybe even for me, my other option would be core. But the moss definitely has this ability to absorb things. I got big into zeolites in my soil for a similar reason, because as we know, zeolites can bind certain elements that are out of balance and release other ones that are needed. And I really am finding that for us to restore the earth and the soil, we have to kind of bring in some of these elements because things are so off kilter. But yeah, the acid rain thing, dude, it's a trip, man, what they've done. But yeah, in a greenhouse with filtered water, you're good, right? Like, yeah. And you're on the spring.
It's my understanding if it's an outdoor garden, if you replenish it right, kind of like you're doing, then you could kind of mitigate the rain, which I'm sure, like you said, varies from location to location, right? Like some places are going to be worse than others.
Yeah. I think the key is just getting diverse, robust microbial populations. That's like the number one thing, right? And then anything that you're throwing at it, whether it's acid rain or say something else in the environment, maybe chemtrail dust or whatever that stuff is, unicorn dust. I don't know what that is. But that the microbes, just like within us, when we come in contact with foreign things, it's like they kind of go to work and they help protect us. Maybe a few shoulders die in the process, but hopefully we're creating a community. What soil to buy, all this stuff, these questions come up. The best soil is to build soil, and you can only do that through cover crops, in my opinion. Growing vegetable crops will not build soil. But to give everyone even maybe a different answer to that, because not everyone can do that, is try to find something local. So for example, there's a company called Texas Pure Products that lives like they have a few places around DFW, but their main little area is like 15 minutes from my house. They take all the tree trimmings and bushes, and yeah, some of that stuff's going to be sprayed, but then they have a deal with a lot of the organic food suppliers where they'll actually add, and some of the stuff I don't think is organic, but anyways, they're certified organic compost. It's all from local stuff, even if the food that was thrown in there was maybe grown in Chile or Mexico or something, right? But for the most part, the bulk of that material, that what they call feedstock, is just tree trimmings from the local ecosystem. And so I would suggest, like, go there. Don't go and buy bag soil if you can help it.
Miracle Grow.
Yeah, you got to, even the organic stuff in the bags, it's just such a huge carbon footprint, And the theme we kind of talked about before we got on here was like sustainability and stuff. So I'm trying to like kind of think about that as an answer as well. It's kind of like, what are those solutions? Because even where I'm at, like building this place up, like I had to bring in compost. I couldn't make enough compost. But there's a few really cool compost methods out there. One is called a Johnson bioreactor, and you build the compost vertically. You basically take cow panels and then you wrap it, and then you have these PVC tubes, maybe 3-inch wide, and you drill holes all down them, and you set like 3 of those inside this chamber, and then you just layer it up, and then within like 6 months, or it might even be 3 months, it's completely ready. You're using vertical space versus just piling it on and getting in there and breaking your back and turning it over. You don't have to do any of that, because the air goes through the top, comes through the bottom, out the sides, and naturally does that turning process for you. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, because unless you have a small Kubota like what you've got, get ready. Your back's gonna get fried. And it's a lot. Because the first thing that we did on our property, we had black clay everywhere. There was gaps in the ground, maybe 3 feet wide. I mean, you could just look down. There was like one tree, and I'm just like, what the hell? So I got to an arborist and just had him start dumping mulch. And we literally dumped maybe 2 feet of mulch over the whole property, just spread it over the whole thing. Now some washed away, but a lot stayed. And that instantly brought in the fungi. So someone asked about compost for mushrooms, and we might as well just knock that one out, because that's kind of like where this segues into is the tree. A lot of compost, mushroom compost, they make from mushrooms. But at the end of the day, we're seeing a lot of heavy metals in those mushrooms because they're grown with what's called the master mix. A lot of guys growing mushrooms now that aren't growing them organically are using the master mix, which has got a lot of GMO soy and other things inside of it. It's not the best ever. A lot of synthetic minerals and things that I would never want to put into my grow medium. But again, mushrooms are remediators. So they're going to collect what is out of balance. And a lot of those ingredients used to grow them are high in heavy metals. So mushroom compost has a high heavy metals. What's the solution? Mulch, because mulch just from wood chips, mulch from wood chips, wood specifically. There's something about what wood does on the ground. If you lift it up after it's been on the ground, dig underneath it, after a couple months, you see white hyphae everywhere, and you'll see little mushrooms popping up everywhere. I'm sure you've seen some of my posts where it's just like there's mushrooms everywhere, and it's like, what the hell? Is he growing mushrooms? And it's like, no, it's just mulch. It does something with the fungal networks, and feeds them, gets them growing, so.
This house came with a mulcher, so I'm getting excited. That's
really
cool.
Wow. Perfect. Yeah. That is essential where you're at. Yeah. Mulch everything. Never leave the soil bare, that's the key. If you don't have plants growing in it, cover it up. Mother Earth does not like to be naked. She likes to be covered up. So we got to respect her wishes on that. Because in reality, it's only that first 6 to 8 inch layer that most of the activity is really happening. And so what's happened to that, right? It's all gotten blown away, the dust bowl. It's all gotten plowed away, blown away. So it's just not there. So now we have these hard pan layers. So even if you go out and mulch, you still have what's called stratification. You've got your maybe compost and all your good stuff, but underneath that, what do you have? Your native soil. And based on that structure, regardless, you're creating what's called a stratification layer. It just takes time for that to get immersed, I've never used any tiller or anything on my property. Everything's been done with hand tools. My vision was to create a farm that was off grid. It didn't need any gas or electricity. But what I found was that in the beginning, it's really wise to get a tractor in, especially like what you've got with the backhoe on the back, but create permanent bed systems that allow you to have good drainage. Because microbes can dry out and they'll go dormant, but if it's too wet, you'll completely destroy them. So that's something that I didn't know till too long ago, is that drainage is like one of the most important things. So learning how to build on the contour swell, really watching your water. It goes back to water again, but in this conversation, it's how's it moving on your property. So.
And you mentioned the Dust Bowl, because I remember learning about that in high school history class. It was like the drought in the 1930s. And do I have it right where pretty much the topsoil, like you were just saying, that 6 to 8 inches, that was swept away and then the soil couldn't hold moisture anymore, and so they couldn't grow anything? Is that kind of accurate? Or?
Pretty much, yeah. From what I understand, we're both researching this, right? So it's the tilling is what really caused it. Keeping Mother Earth bare, naked, is what really caused this to happen. The wind got involved somewhere, right? Because or else it wouldn't have been dusty. But it was dusty because the Mother Earth was naked and bare, and she wasn't covered, and she literally blew away, went back to the ocean.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people don't realize that trees are like antenna for moisture, right? And rain.
Absolutely. Any plant in the ground, it charges the earth. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have plants going in the ground, like you're not getting that what's called EC. I've been getting real big on EC, get an EC meter. What's your electrical conductivity in your soil? Because if it's not popping, you're not going to be able to grow anything. People want to look at your pH. It's a waste. The pH shifts and changes so much. EC and bricks are where it's at. And that's what Carrie Reams talked a lot about. Dr. Albrecht talked a lot about. And you would love Albrecht, Matt, because he fits right into your message. He was like a savant, World War II. He was around, kicked it with Carrie Reams, and they figured it out. They were like, oh, it's the minerals. The reason why you guys can't grow healthy plants and insects are coming in is because you don't have the right minerals. And he proposed this whole solution. Well, what happened post-World War II, right? NPK, fertilizers got pushed onto farmers. So they totally washed him, threw him under the rug. Carrie Reams was a quack. This dude figured out through proper mineral administration through these emisters, he was like growing pea plants in like 3 weeks, full to harvest, and not in a GMO, wacky, weird way. It was all about minerals and ionization and misting the plant. He basically just showed that a plant will stay in a photosynthetic state as long as you keep it in the environment it wants to be in. But as soon as you start to bring in factors, the plant will either perspire or the plant will either stunt. And we've all seen it. We've seen plants that we maybe have grown and like they stunt out. And then we've seen plants that like just grow rapidly. And it's like, what's going on there? And so the whole idea we might think of, or I used to think, was that, oh, well, plants probably photosynthesize when the sun's out, you know, and then when the sun goes down, they stop, you know, and this isn't true. They can actually be generating growth 24/7 in the right environment. And it doesn't damage them in any way. It doesn't make them less nutritious. It doesn't. But anyways, yeah, Carrie Reams and Dr. Albrecht, man, are the true elders of kind of remineralizing the soil, getting us back to food as medicine.
Yeah, I found a cool article here I could link below, the Albrecht Method, just how important are nutrient ratios, July 2020.
So he developed a specific test, Matt. So typically, like you would go, you're in Idaho, correct?
Yeah.
So you would go to your university there. You would give them a soil sample. They would give you an analysis of that soil, a mineral analysis, and then from that you would then buy fertilizer or minerals, right? Depending on your method. This is how every farmer farms. But that test that the university is doing is wrong. It's the wrong type of test. And the Albrecht method is a specific type of analysis of the soil that no one does. There's only 2 labs, I think, in the nation, Logan Labs, and I forget the second one. I use Logan, but they're the only ones that will give you a base saturation test, like what's currently going on mineral-wise, and then what's the overall mineral breakdown of your soil. And not only is the test different, but his recommendations are different, because like say you need so much magnesium on your soil from the tell, you need 100,000 pounds of magnesium, right? Well, you can't add all that at once, because then you'll throw off the calcium, which then will throw off the boron, which then will throw off. So you can only add a specific amount based on the ratio that you have of the other cations, anions and cations, other minerals in the soil. So it's a process. It could take you 5 years to get your magnesium where you ideally want it to be, just because you can't add it all at once. However, his methods like are, even if, you know, your first year, if you use his methods, you're going to see insane results just by applying the proper minerals to your soil. And most of them are rocks, you know, none of the stuff that he ever suggested would be any type of synthetic form or anything that you and I wouldn't jive with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, because the NPK thing, I hope I didn't confuse people talking about that for years, because NPK isn't inherently bad. It's the synthetic one, because
right.
isn't it kind of like humans, like calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, like our macro minerals, but we also have, 80 plus trace minerals. Isn't the plant the same way? Like you need that NPK, but you don't want to get it from.
That when we say NPK, though, I think people get it, right? That it's the fertilizers, the salt-based fertilizers that were used from the bombs. The same shit. They just changed the label. That's it. They changed the label, folks. That's it. And then that's what gets sprayed. And they were force feeding these types of nutrients. They were saying, "Oh, you only need NPK." That was the message, right? Around NPK was that you only needed it. That was all you needed, that the plant needed. And that, and there's these salt-based forms that totally disregard the biological system of the soil and the plant and the symbiosis. And it's force feeding it. It's like IV drip. It's like the biohack guys of the world that just want to inject the vitamins in them or whatever. So yeah, but yes, plants need nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but they also need way more. Albrecht says the plant mainly needs calcium, right? The macro minerals. So he was big on that. He was like, "Oh, this is the calcium that you should be, should be the N, right?" Everyone really thinks nitrogen. They don't even think PK. They think N. It's always N. It won't grow. I need more nitrogen. What people don't realize is that there's enough urea, or excuse me, I shouldn't say it like that, but there's enough nitrogen in the atmosphere that if the plant is healthy, it doesn't need any added nitrogen to the soil, even in an organic form, like even in a form of like horse manure or rabbit poo or goat poo. It's in the air. And like, think about how much nitrogen is, we've learned about this thing called the nitrogen cycle and like basic, science. But if the plant isn't metabolizing right, its metabolic functions are off, then it can't synthesize the nitrogen from the air. But I forget what Dan used to say, but he used to say something like there's like, in a 1 acre plot, there's like 700 18-wheelers full of urea of nitrogen, the amount of nitrogen, right, that's in the air. So to wrap it in our head to like realize like there's really a copious amount of nitrogen in the air. Like we have to stop thinking we need to add it to the soil, and we need to focus on the minerals in the soil, and then the plant will pull the nitrogen from the air. And that's when plants just grow gangbuster. Like they just go nuts. They just, every day you walk out, you're like, holy shit, this plant is growing like crazy, and it's because it's got the right minerals and it's functioning.
That makes sense. Yeah, we grew tobacco at the last greenhouse, and it grew like weeds. And I think tobacco requires higher nitrogen, I believe. And I don't know if coffee, maybe. But.
Yeah, tobacco is a sacred plant. It's one of the what they call the elder plants or the master plants. One of the masters. There's only like 9 master plants, and it's a heavy feeder. Like you said, it needs not just nitrogen, Matt, it needs everything. It wants minerals. And same with coffee. I mean, think about how powerful these foods are, right? Coffee and tobacco. So naturally, I mean, even cannabis, right? These are powerful medicines, not foods, right? They're medicines. And naturally, they're going to need more, right? I mean, it just makes sense, right? Because of what they give you, what the package they bring, it's like, holy sheesh. So
yeah, even coca, right? I still want to go to South America and try that because I've had the powder before and it gave me a nice buzz.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think I sent you some, didn't I?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I have to find a way to include it. My friend used to make chocolates with it infused.
Yeah,
that fueled my road trip up here from California.
That's cool. Yeah, no, the coca or what the stuff that I say is more of like a mambe, but it's mainly just coca. But yeah, the coca leaf is another, like, look up nutritional benefits of coca leaf, and you're gonna be like the protein, the vitamins, the minerals, and yeah, getting it fresh is definitely a different experience than anything you could ever get. It's definitely a trip. But typically when you get it fresh, you're in a higher altitude where you need it. So you don't notice it as much as when you're lower altitude. Like I've noticed that, like I can get pretty geared up on that stuff, like here on the farm sometimes. Whereas if I'm higher altitude, like if we go snowboarding or up in the mountains hiking and I take some, it really just, it's like cordyceps in that moment, and that it just makes me feel amazing, and I don't have like fatigue, you know.
I love your cordyceps tincture, by the way. I'm hooked on that stuff. It's great.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that's been a last year was when I really started that production on that and the farming and growing of it, and learned so much about the industry now about it. And I see that, you know, Ron's developing a cordyceps tincture, but it's all from the varieties in China, which don't drop spores and they're basically sterile. And the, you know, the Chinese have figured out how to do the mushroom cultivation above and beyond anything we've ever gotten. But teamed up with some really cool guys in the States here that are geneticists and breeders of these wild varieties in the States here in America.
Yeah, that's funny. That's a question that someone sent in. Said, ask them about how herbal extracts or mass-produced supplements that are farmed and imported, pretty much saying, I guess you don't know where they're coming from and quality.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So, you know, typically what we see is you see farmers. You don't see one farm working with any direct, streamlined to you as the customer. Like that doesn't happen. You have a group of farmers that then sell to a manufacturing facility, right? And so, which is a totally different entity. And these facilities have these massive vats and these all this massive equipment, and they bring in you know, all these raw materials from all these different farms. There's a lot of lead time in between there. There's a lot of what I call bastardization of the energetics. So it's like the energy is just not what it should be. You're getting mixed soil profiles. You're just getting like a smorgasbord of stuff. And then a lot of this stuff, like when I hear this question, it makes me think of China a lot and the herbs from China that you can, you know, it's like, I remember when I first started getting herbs from China, I'm like, why do they all smell the same, look the same, and they taste the same? Like, what the hell is going on here? You know, and they just have this weird. So typically what they do is, since they get this collection of herbs from all these different farms, the quality is not that good. They'll start to create HPLC extractions where they standardize things. And standardization is basically taking the alkaloid or the nutrient, if you will, inside a specific plant and then just capitalizing on it. I like using that word because it's really kind of like a bastard way to deliver the plant to someone. You capitalize on the one thing research shows and you get rid of everything else. And now you've got a 50-to-1 standardized holy basil or 100-to-1 Tonkat Ali, and you only need to take a, you know, small amount of it. But the process that it took to get there, and why would you want to take it there in the first place? Well, you do want to take it there if you have really crappy raw materials that are weak, because if you were to just freeze dry those herbs, or if you were just to dry them, you wouldn't feel it. And you would take those herbs and they would suck, right? And you'd be like, this is no bueno. So they concentrate that. It's the same with the cannabis industry and all these like waxes and oils and these vape pens and cartridges. They're concentrating crappy cannabis, you know, and turning it into oil because no one's going to buy that stuff on the shelf as a raw material. So a lot of these products, that's kind of what happens. And then the shit gets added, right? So a lot of these standardizations, they have to spray this stuff on like maltodextrin, or have to spray it on something to make it adhere to stay in a powdered form, or keep it in the form that you want it in, or adhere it to coffee. Like, you know, like that one big company that everyone loves nowadays that copied my name, kind of. No, I'm just joking.
It's so funny you say that. I got a haircut yesterday and she's like, what do you think about that mushroom coffee? Because I'm kind of giving her a health lecture, you know, and I'm like, stay away from it. No, it's weak. And it's hard to get through to these people, though. It's like, you know, like, I'm like, no, just buy it online, you know, like, don't waste your money. You know?
Yeah. You know, it's like you and I are so DIYers and we're so like, we just get into it. And it's like, I've had that same experience, Matt. I went over to like friends' houses and I'm like, why are you guys, Like I get kind of offended, you know, I'm like, what the fuck are they buying this crap for? But in their defense, in that company's defense, they've made it stupid simple for people. It doesn't mean the quality's there. It's super shitty quality, but they've made it simple. But they've also kept us in that same consciousness of consumerism, where convenience is key and don't care about waste. I mean, I think about one of those boxes that they sell, and it has those little packets inside of it. I mean, we've looked at this. I have a machine. I was making sachets. I couldn't do it. I'm like, this is so freaking wasteful. Like, is it really that hard to just have a resealable bag and people open and scoop it? And you know what? If we don't make hundreds of millions of dollars, I don't give a shit, because I'm not going to contribute to that. You know, and I get that what we're doing is we're giving good products out. So if we can make it easier for people, then maybe that there's this other side to that. But I just can't do that. I mean, we do everything, you know, we manufacture everything, we ship everything, we package everything. We now we're growing a lot of our own stuff and expanding that out. So it's just, I don't know. Once you get involved in every aspect of that, everything changes. And most of these brands, they have no idea where their raw materials really come from. They might have taken some pictures they got sent or went on a trip once, or I see a lot of that company take pictures where they're located, I think in Norway or somewhere, but none of their mushrooms come from there. They're all come from China. Every fucking one of them, excuse my language, but it's just like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, I mean, what kind of crap is that? What if you did that? What if I did that, Matt? You know what I'm saying? Like, we're bootstrapped, right? Like, we're grassroots. Like, we grew because our shit worked and people healed from the advice, right? Not because we had mommy daddy money and we had a big marketing budget and we could, you know, dump tons of money in ads. I mean, look, Facebook and Instagram 2 years ago, 3 years ago is not the Facebook and Instagram today. You know, you can ask any marketer, like, you could do anything back in the day with ads. You could sell anyone anything and people would buy it. And this is not the way it is nowadays, but kind of went on a rant there. I apologize.
I love it. Well, you mentioned Tonkat Ali. I think we're coming into pine pollen season. Like, I'm seeing the little catkins, I think they're called.
Yeah.
Trees. And I've never harvested, so I've been watching YouTube videos, and I guess there's different methods, like putting a bag over, shaking it, and then a lot of the videos are saying, they say just cut off the catkins, bring them home, and shake them, and that's the ideal way to do it because it's faster. But I'm really excited to collect.
Yeah, you should be, because it's gonna be fresh, and that's fire. And I know you love pine pollen, so that's gonna be really good for you. The other thing though is, like, if you're cool with it, to get like some food grade plastic, like a tarp, and like shimmy up that tree like a squirrel and start shaking that sumbitch, and it'll just all fall on the tarp, and then you can, like, you and your girl can get out there and just collect like a copious amount. I know you like the 5-gallon jugs and stuff, so it's like, dude, you have a 5-gallon bucket of pine pollen, you know, cutting it, putting a bag over it works great if you're, you know, want a small amount. But I know you don't have time to go out there and do that. My thought to you would be like, dude, just go get you a nice food grade tarp. I mean, it's going to be on the tarp for maybe an hour. You're going to scoop it up and get it out there. It's not going to sit, as long as it doesn't sit in the sun or sit in the rain or whatever, you're good.
Right. That's pretty cool. So you kind of wrap the tarp around the trunk or put it at least on one side.
That's how ours gets harvested. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's southern China, it's a higher altitude. It's one of the only products I still get from there, but it's clean, it's pure, it's real floral. It's got a real, like, a flower smell. We only get it once a year, because every time we've tried to get it outside from this one window, we've noticed it's like, we didn't like it, so we send it back, or I'll eat it. We can. So yeah, you know, once you can get it fresh like that, it's real floral and super powerful medicine.
And yeah, we got a question on yin and yang herbs. This would be a yang herb. I got into it years ago, I think, because I was on, you know, nut butters and nuts and seeds, and I was vegan. So I was just missing like that strength. And I started adding in like elk antler and pine pollen. I was like, wow. And meat and that combo, I'm like, wow, I'm regaining my strength. And it's my understanding, like the tincture is better if you're over 30, and then the powder, just eating it if you're under 30. Is that kind of accurate? Or?
Yeah, and that's based on the fact that the tincture kind of captures more of those androgens, and like what young guy needs more androgens in his body doesn't. All right, I think I've even talked to you about the elk velvet like that with because of its androgens. Not to go on elk velvet, but there's definitely a difference in the tincture and the powder. The powder seems more like a food. The androgens aren't really going to get digested so much. However, I definitely feel a very androgenic effect from the powder. Like there's a saying that a lot of the trainers at Equinox call it, and like they call it pine poner, because they're like, every time I take this stuff, I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, what the heck? And they're all on the powder, you know. But older men whose T's dropped, androstenedione, androstone, testosterone, your favorite DHEA, the copious, not copious, the tiny minuscule amounts that can get in there with the alcohol tincture. Those are those androgens. I just started spitting them off with no context, but those are the androgens inside pine pollen, and that's why you'd want to take the tincture. And they even say to like put nettle root in there to block. I find that to be kind of contraindicative. You know, if you're having issues with estrogen and all that stuff, you've got some other stuff going on that you need to look at. You know what I mean? It's probably stress or something on that lines. But
yeah, I believe PUFAs, polyunsaturated fats, like turn on the aromatase enzyme, and there's like other, like you said, root cause things. I mean, you could take AIs and stuff. I mean, I love nettle root tincture. I like.
Yeah. Like nettle root is amazing for sinuses and so many things besides aromatase. I mean, eat broccoli sprout. I do broccoli microgreens. You know, that's my jam. I freeze dry them every now and then.
Your sandwiches look awesome that you make.
Yeah. Those are at home, you know, sandwiches. So, yeah, it's been good. We found a local bakery, sprouted sourdough. You know, it's not enriched flour. You know, I was so, you know, knew about enriched flour for years, and I see you start talking about it again. You're such a blessing, bro. I really appreciate your words and your wisdom, because, you know, I was like buying organic hot dog buns, you know, and not thinking of it. And then all of a sudden you start bringing that stuff to my radar again a few years ago. And I'm like, wait, turnover. Sure enough, fucking throw this away. Like, it was all enriched. I'm like, you can't even. So then we found the baker who is local, and like, she's like, no, I don't use any enriched flours, and and so we get our bread now, just like we get our meat from farmers we know. You know, we get our bread from bakers we know. You know,
that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you too. Yeah, and we inspire each other, so that's super cool. You don't have morels down there, do you? Morel mushrooms?
No, not in Texas. Now
they just started sprouting up around here.
Yeah, get them. And Arkansas has a little bit, which is like 4 hours from me. I go there like pretty regularly. It's where my wife's from. I moved up there for a few years. That's actually where I've had my figured out this is what I was supposed to be doing events. But yeah, no morels down here. We have reishi down here. We have turkey tail is pretty prevalent down here. No chaga. We've got quite a few. The lion's mane can grow in a few areas, but it's definitely a little bit more of a sensitive mushroom. And like up north, I've noticed more. A lot of birch polypores, which are very antiviral, but none of the like king medicinals other than reishi and turkey tail. There's a few others though. I don't forage much here. Lack of forest, really.
I have no excuse. I'm surrounded. I need to get out there.
It's good. Yeah, you have just a whole pharmacopoeia behind you.
Yeah. Awesome. Someone asked a good question. Does the concept of a liver detox make sense? Doesn't the liver just need support?
Yeah, I think that, you know, you've said this, I'll say this, context is everything. I feel like extreme remedies are needed for extreme dis-ease. Okay. But most of us just need support. We just need support. We need to support. And the body naturally wants to heal itself. The power that created you is the power that can heal you. Let go, get the crap out, like, or stop putting the crap in. Yeah, it's always like detox, cleanse, get it out, get it out. How about let's stop putting it in first, right? Then let's support what we have, right? And then, like, you know, but if someone's like, you know, like stage 4 cancer or it's got some major stuff going on, that's an extreme dis-ease or disharmony in the body. Going straight for the liver, I don't know. You know, I know I've done quite a few of the liver gallbladder flushes, you know, in my life. My wife's real big on the coffee enemas right now. And does that detox the liver or does that support the liver? I think it depends on the body and the person, but I think that we have to move away from being sold a cleanse or a detox or being told that we all need to cleanse and detox when our body is naturally just doing that. Just like what this person doesn't, the liver naturally, it's like, yes, yeah, it is. Support it. Eat Sazandra berry. Take methylsulfonylmethane. I mean, MSM and camu together for the liver, I've seen do amazing things. Magnesium, there's another one. Magnesium bicarbonate's huge for the liver and gallbladder and the thyroid hormones and all that goody good stuff that's happening in there. Sazandra mentioned it again. Phase 1, phase 2 liver detox. HCl, hydrochloric acid for phase 2 liver detox. I mean, I was going to tell you that it was come up. I was like, hey, bro, I think your next supplement should be HCl. I'll buy it all day because it's one of those ones that's like your vitamin E. It's like everyone needs to be on it. And it's one of those ones that kind of gets swept under the rug, you know, and not talked about a lot. And I'm really looking at getting, I've got a gallon of liquid HCl coming. I'm going to start mega dosing on it and really start playing more with HCl for the liver support. Let's get off track here. So yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. I hope that answered the question. Pretty spot on, you know?
Yeah. And I love your salt for digestion too. Like I just had on my friend Lauren De La Cruz of like Innate Functional Nutrition. She's really cool. Studies Morley stuff, taking this course and into minerals. And we were talking a lot about salt and she loves your salt. And I guess sodium chloride builds the hydrochloric and maybe someone needs that extra boost and it might be good to like support, but I've been like tripled or times forward my salt consumption since that interview with her, and I feel awesome.
Yeah. You know, people see me add salt, and we have Nicole who helps us with social media. Such an awesome human. I sometimes give her a hard time about her recipes with salt. She's like, no, I love it, and I'm like, well, I do too, Nicole, but not everyone's like us. Maybe we should do a little, but yeah, I'm like salt and I use so much of it. And the thing is when you start cooking your own food and preparing your own food, which I know a lot of your people do, which I know a lot of them don't too. So they need to hear this. The sodium isn't there. So, you know, when you're adding it, you're like, when I'm like doing like hash browns or mashed potatoes, like, it's like I throw in a tablespoon of salt. I need like 7 tablespoons of salt, right? To actually make the butter and the cream and the garlic to all coincide. And then, I ain't gonna lie, dude. One of the best things I like to add to sweet potatoes, or not sweet potatoes, I just gave it away. Shit. To mashed potatoes is sugar. I love adding a little bit of coconut sugar, or I don't really like adding honey. It needs to be a granulated sugar. Or beet sugar, which most sugar comes from beets. People don't know that. I think you woke me to that from that one brain. Like, this is actually coming from beets. And I was like, and I looked it up. I think the farm was like in Texas too or some shit. Anyways, that's salt. Yeah. We are the salt of the earth, right? And we definitely need it, especially if you work out. Like, I train in the morning a little bit, sweat. I work outside, I'm sweating there. I do class at night 3 or 4 days a week. I'm sweating profusely in that class. So if I'm not up taking salt like crazy, it seems that like things are just off kilter a little bit.
Yeah. We were talking about slow and fast oxidizers. And I guess the slow oxidizers, which is 80% of the population, burns through sodium and potassium instead of magnesium and calcium like the fast oxidizers. I thought that was fascinating.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Wow. Okay, yeah. I could definitely see truth in that, especially as a practitioner. You find yourself like when you first found raw veganism, right? You're like, everyone needs to know this and and really you were just aligning to your path as a healer or as a communicator of health and well-being, an advocate, if you will. And then you kind of run into roadblocks with people. I'm sure you've ran into roadblocks with people in the vitamin E and the dissolve it all. Like, it's like, no, it works. But then people will get on social media and say shit. And you're just kind of like, there's the context, right? So, but maybe it's because they're just different, and then it kind of can throw some in the mix,
Yep.
It's a trip.
Absolutely.
But for most of us.
Well, I'm so tapped because I still love my coffee, and I'm roasting my own green beans and doing it right and stuff. And but I'm very tuned into my stress levels, and I do the little salt. There's a bunch of brands, little salt shots, the ketone type stuff. But I'll do like 4 or 5 a day, and it feels pretty good.
Yeah. I feel you, man. And and like for me with coffee and caffeine, I enjoy it. I really do. It's like it's hard for me not to want to have that. But like you said, it's a big piece of that is you've got to have food in your belly before you consume any stimulants. So important. And if you can wait till like 10:30, I found too, that's even better. But usually by 10:30, people don't want coffee. They're used to that ritual in the morning and that smell, the first thing they have, which that's really the main thing I'm always speaking against. Like, don't wake up and go straight for the coffee. Like, wake up, drink water, drink some mag bicarb, eat some food, then have it. Because in reality, that's when you really need it. Like if you ate a really good breakfast, a hearty breakfast, you need a little boost after that. If you're fixing your metabolism, if your adrenals have been wrecked, if you're on this path, and that's why you're listening to this podcast right now, I can almost guarantee you that you are going to need a little bit of something like that after you've eaten a full meal, especially if you've been skipping breakfast, especially, if you've been burning the candle at both ends, and especially if you've been having stimulants first thing in the morning,
Yeah. That was me for years. Blue-green algae and chia seeds for lunch every day. It was bad.
Me too, bro. I was there too, dude. Juices.
Liquids of vitality.
Yeah, I was juicing so much. I just started throwing up every time I would juice. And that's when I realized, I'm like, why am I throwing up juice? You got too much, bro. It's too much. Too much.
Yeah, my friends told me a story. They projectile vomited from that Jim Humble stuff, the MMS. They took too much of that.
Yeah. Dude, that stuff smells like chlorine pool water. Have you've played with it? I'm sure, the MMS.
I actually haven't. Yeah, I know Kassar is big into it, and I've never made it. It just seems really complicated.
Yeah, I think I bought it, the Miracle Mineral Supplement. I forget what element that actually is. It's not sodium chloride.
Chlorine dioxin.
Chlorine dioxin. Yes, that's what it is. Yeah, dude, I took that stuff once, and there's a protocol with it, right? So you take it for every day. I couldn't get past the 3rd day. I was like, I can't do this. I just can't do it. It's just like, oh, stomach. Yeah.
Did you ever do the Turpentine thing?
I've tried that one before. That's super old school. That's beyond MS, though. That's like old folklore. And powerful medicine. Wow. If you can get some good stuff from good raw material, it's all been pretty much figured out, right?
Yeah, the parasite thing's funny because I think obviously the carnivore diet's trending, but like the raw primal diet is like super trending right now, which I think is kind of stupid, but they're promoting like parasites or symbiotes. Like we need, they're not, there's no such thing as a pathogen pretty much. It's like the opposite extreme from Convid, right? It's like, it's all fake. It's like, obviously there's a balance approach.
Yes, there has to be some sanity. It's like there's three sides to every story: his side, her side, and the truth. And so it's like with these health things, right? It's like parasites. Anytime I see someone like swing this way and pin there, I'm like, I don't know. I got to be careful with this information. There's a lot of good info about parasites and how they can control your thoughts. And, you mentioned Khazar a lot. I remember Khazar. And he's one of those, he's a trip. I used to think he was, just on a side note, I used to think that when I first saw him, like he got all jacked and ripped from being raw. I had no idea he used to take steroids and bodybuilding, and he just stopped eating. And that's why he looks like that. And his dad's like a multi-millionaire, and he doesn't have to work, and he can do whatever the hell he wants, and that whole deal. So again, if we could all sit around at home all day and stretch and work out and not have to worry about bills and stress, we would all live completely different lives than we live now. But, anyways,
yeah, we had a funny question. I wanted to ask you this one before. Someone asked, should we be worried about a food shortage?
I would have never started my backyard farm if I didn't think that is a possible scenario. I hope it doesn't happen. I pray that it doesn't happen. However, through all that's happening, when people talk about COVID and everything that happened last year with everything that went on and how it was like the worst year ever, and all these memes about screw 2020 or whatever year that was that all happened, and worst year ever. And this might sound funky to people, but I literally probably had one of the best years of my life. And I guess the reason why is because it made me cook even more meals than ever. It like almost forced me in it in the beginning, which is only good for me. Trying to word this in a way that doesn't offend too many people or not be sensitive to people that got sick and died that maybe they thought they died from COVID or whatever. But I feel like when you're on the right path, when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, that the love just stays around. It showers. You stay in this mode. Because when I talked with people that were working jobs they hated and they got fired, like they were in this like downward spiral. It was like their worst year of their life. So it's like some of us had the worst year of our life, some of us had the best year of our life. I know the question was about food security, but it's like it's like when you're doing the right thing, and I'm working this soil to grow food, everything just got really awesome. And now we're looking at a property to do pretty much what you're doing, go completely off grid, build an earth ship about 20-30 minutes from here. We've found some people in the community that want to go in on like a couple 100 acres together, and like they have their 50 or I have my 50, and we do that. So yeah, I think there is a food shortage. I mean, guys, we have to understand that like most of our food doesn't even come here. We're already in a food shortage. What are you talking? Like where are we going to have? We already are. When you have to buy blueberries from Chile or blackberries from Mexico, then to me, that's a problem. So, I should have just said that from the beginning. We already are in a food shortage situation. I mean, because some of this stuff I wouldn't even deem as food.
Yeah.
So
last year I almost went into the rewilding thing, which I think you've played with a little bit, and as like, screw homesteading, I'm just going to hunt and forage. But in an ideal world, you do both, right? You homestead and you do that.
Yeah. You have to cultivate plants at some point. It's mainly your storage crops, your squashes, your potatoes, things that you can store, because it's if you're growing a bunch of greens and shit, like those are going to go bad real quick. And unless you got a freeze dryer or some way to dehydrate them, but in the essence too, they don't give you the punch that a potato can give you. You know, you can live on a potato, and it's hard to get sick of potatoes. It can happen. I've done it, but it's pretty tough, you know? So
Yeah, I'd miss my butter. I mean, we have goats. We haven't made goat butter yet, but I need butter and salt for my potatoes. So I need to
I have to have
stockpile
it.
some salt.
I need some sour cream too, you know? A little bacon.
It just seems like you get bored. I mean, I always like doing those mental exercises. Like, you know, if we didn't have access to any store anymore, what's my 5-year, 10-year, 20-year, 50-year plan? You know, how would that pan out? And I think there's a way. I mean, it took me like 11 years to get here, but I think there's a way to move towards that kind of security.
Right. Yeah. You start with the plant in the apartment, right? You've got to start, you know, I feel like the real way for us to wage war, if we're going to call this metabolic or this whole epidemic a war, or the powers that be a war, or whatever, the way we wage war is by getting our roots rooted deep into the earth and figuring out how to cultivate food for ourselves. And then once we do that, then we dial in how do we make this food more nutritious, you know? But we have to get our hands in the dirt. We come from the earth. We come from the dirt. You know, we have to get outside. We have to get barefoot, breathing in the microbes from our compost pile, you know, touching them, getting them in our fingernails. Like my fingernails are always so dirty. And it's, well, 3 of them are because I play classical guitar, so they're long, you know, so I'm always like digging in the dirt, and we have to get connected to that. That to me is how we wage war, you know, that because to me the real epidemic here is the metabolic epidemic. You know, it's something we've been saying forever, way before this epidemic came, and the whole metabolic thing has been our IP for a long time. I just never really pushed it on social media, but I feel like in order for us to really counteract that, we grow food. We grow food. For our community or for ourselves, for our friends. And now it's like I think we only have like 9 chickens. I can't eat all those eggs, bro. Like, you know, like people come over, I'm like, take these eggs, go, you know, just enjoy. We were gonna sell them at the shop, but I'm just like, let's just give them away, you know. Like,
that's awesome. Talk about liver support too, right? B vitamins, choline, protein.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, my wife cannot have eggs. She gets these millas on her face from them, which sucks because we have really high quality, awesome eggs. She can only have them like once or twice a week. And I try to not have eggs more than 4 days in a row because I've read stuff about histamine reaction after 4 days. So to be cautious of that. But the egg, yeah, an amazing food. And chickens are so easy to take care of, like out of all the animals, right? So.
And they're fun to watch too. Like we'll give them some goat milk or, you know, whatever leftover scraps, and the way they run, just their little feet. So funny to watch them run towards you, you know.
Hours, bro. I'll sit out and just watch. It's so funny you said that. That's so funny, dude. Yeah, like they are a trip. I'll step out my back porch, like, bah, bah, and they'll all come running, you know, they kind of waddle over like, bah, 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 bah. You know, one will be a little bit more vocal than the other. Some will come right up to you. Some will jump on you. Some won't. They have personalities. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It's really rewarding, and it really kind of forces you outside. We're still thinking of where to put the chicken coop, and that's part of the fun of it, kind of the layout when you're setting up a homestead, like strategically, especially with snow, having to think about that. So
yeah, high ground, put them where you can get to them, and you know you can move them around eventually if you need to. That's what I do. I built a coop at least 4.5 feet post, and then built the coop on top of that platform, just because we have lots of rain and wacky stuff. Like keep them off. They want to be dry. They want to be up. They want to roost. But then I use an electric fence to move them around the property so they don't get into like certain areas. I'm tight niche, you know, I'm on an acre in the back. So I have to really be strategic on the birds or else they'll decimate the beds. You know, I get a little pee and poop, but it doesn't outweigh the roots that get ripped open and exposed. And so,
yeah.
You know.
Have you gotten into the bees yet? Beehives, beekeeping?
Yeah, so I've got three hives. We had five, and I got lazy last year and didn't research enough, and I wasn't stacking my boxes on top for that new season. But yes, we have bees, and I think that's another huge one. Chickens, bees. I want to do sheep. I'm really gotten big into sheep milk here lately. I've been getting it from Miller's Organic, and love the goat. Finally found a lady to get good goat milk, so I'm going to get some this weekend. Um, Most people feed GMO grain to their goats, so that whole deal. But I was looking at sheep too. Sheep are like way like more protein, more calcium, and I don't know.
That's cool. That's funny. We're looking at that too. Getting some
Yeah,
sheep.
yeah. I would love for you guys to get some sheep and see like how you manage that. I can learn from you.
Where we get our salmon goats, I was picking her brain, the owner of that farm, and she was saying, don't put the male sheep together with the male goats, the bucks, because they'll kill each other, I guess. So that's one of the things, I guess, if you have goats, you need to do separate pens for the sheep.
See, yeah,
especially the males.
Yeah, and I have to look at the milk production of that too, right? Because it might be more nutritious, but if it's half the amount that you would normally get from a goat, then it's kind of like, well, it outweighed itself. Because I can drink some milk, like so is my little girl. Like, there's milk in the fridge, it gets drank real quick.
The wool seems cool too. The last house I bought, they had a loom.
You like the meat, the wool, clothes. Like I'm thinking off grid. The goat. Yeah, you can eat the goat meat. It's kind of goaty, but other than that, it's the milk. I mean, I guess you can make like rattles from the hooves.
Well, there's yaks around me too. Like those seem to be good. I've had yak meat up here. It's pretty good.
That's cool.
Kind of gamey, but
yeah,
we'll have to exchange notes. Let me see, maybe a few more questions. You have time?
Yeah, and then I got a jet. I gotta get my son ready. I was about to holler at him. I was like, wait, this is being recorded. I can't just be like, hey,
all right, we'll do one or two more. Someone asked, why is white Icelandic salt better than Himalayan black lava salt or real salt?
Ask Matt
because it doesn't have impurities.
What are you asking me for? Himalayan, the iron. And first off, the Himalayan's a rock salt. It's not a sea salt. The iron. Man, the Hawaiian salts, I've seen like the heavy metals on that stuff is like through the roof. Microplastics. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we chose the Icelandic because it tested the best. It's like, it's like could have brought on anyone's salt, we could have brought on any of them, but the Icelandic, I just fell in love with how they process it, how they filter it, the C of A's, the mineral analysis, the taste. It just feels good. It's good stuff. It's just so good.
Yeah. Funny story. I put your salt in a pepper shaker. I think I bought it from like Bed Bath & Beyond or some store, and I emptied out the peppers, and I guess there were a few peppercorns left in there. Yesterday morning for breakfast, I'm eating my scrambled eggs and crack. I'm like, whoa, I almost like cracked my tooth. And I look, there's a peppercorn that went through the shaker. I'm like, this isn't salt.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'd say if you're going to do that, just be careful and get a brand new grinder.
Yeah, because you definitely want to grind that salt. It definitely helps to put it in a grinder for sure, hands down. And mine those things. I've went through so many of those grinder things, and they seem to just not last very long, or just not be consistent in their longevity.
Yeah, the one I'm using is pretty good. I think it was from Bed Bath & Beyond. It's like a black top and bottom, and you just twist off. But real quick, magnesium bicarbonate. This is the FAQ. Making it. Can they use RO water? Should they add anything to it? You say distilled works too, right? To use your mag bicarb to make it.
Yeah, RO works. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The key is that people need to understand that you're stripping water of nothing so that you can add a lot of something, right? We're making a magnesium solution. So however we get there the best way you can, and make sure it's cold. It's a big step. It's a lot of steps, you know. I mean, I remember I saw you talking about it for years. I'd read about it in Dancing with Waters, but I'm just like, dude, this guy will not shut up about magnesium bicarbonate. I'm doing it. And you were spot on, bro. You were spot on, dude. I took that stuff. I remember my son being like, Dad, I feel like my head is buzzing. He's like, is this okay to feel like this? Like, he's looking at me and I'm like, my head's buzzing. And I'm like, yeah, I think so. I think everything's good here. Like, how deficient were we? I mean, that goes away, right? Like, you don't feel that forever, right? You normalize, and then once you normalize, you look back and you go, holy shit, I'm so much more whatever now, whatever that is for you. We're all a little different in that. My temperament, though, has definitely softened with the magnesium bicarbonate.
I love it. I agree. Yeah, I think 2 years ago I did an experiment. I'd say just go slow. I did like a mason jar, like a full 32 ounces of magnesium concentrate every day. I think 3 days in a row with like a cigar at night. And I would just like sip it. Like, that was definitely a blowout. Definitely had a cleansing reaction from that.
Yeah, it'll blow you out well. Oh man. Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have to do this again. This was awesome. And I think people will get a lot of practical info, if just inspiration to, get started, get some chickens, get a little garden going. Maybe put a shower filter on their hose.
Yes. Yeah, and they make those. There's a company called maybe Mitolife will make one with the garden hose filter, but you can basically get any filter, and then on the top of it, it can be a garden hose connect, right? So anyone can get that. That's exactly what I use. I stacked a few of those up for my situation. I've looked at the DI too. I want to pick your brain about that, because I was talking with someone. They were like, well, you're going to blast through that DI if you try to pull all the minerals out, from the beginning. And I'm like, well, I don't give a shit. Like, I want the minerals out, and I didn't want to do an exchange resin, because then it would exchange the or calcium for sodium or potassium. I had to choose, right? Either potassium or sodium. And I'm like, I can't do that, because that'll completely fry the plants. Because I've seen people use softeners like that with a DI resin, or not a DI resin, but a softener resin. And they're like, they bought a bunch of plants from us, took them home, built these beds, real yuppie people, and had everything done all pretty. And they're like, nothing's growing. And I'm like, do you have filtration on your house? Yes, we have a full system. And I'm like, let me see it. And sure enough, the resin was a sodium resin. So it was exchanging all the calcium for sodium. They didn't have a DI, so they didn't run to a DI. It was just a softener. So I think it did like catalytic carbon, and then the softener resin. So they had super soft water, but it was only at the expense of how much calcium was in there, because that's what it was getting exchanged out, and then turned into sodium. And then they poured that on their plants, and they just fried the plants.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I know. Like, we just took out the filter in my old house, and the sediment was just brown. I don't know if you saw that picture.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing what just a sediment filter will take out. Like,
and
it'll remove a lot of that.
Groundwater, though, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wonder because I mean, all city water pretty much comes from like these reservoirs. That stuff's probably worse, right? In sediment, it's gotta be.
Has to be.
Gotta be. Oh man, it's always good to talk to you, Matt.
Yeah, it's always fun. Yeah, we'll have to do this regularly. 2 years ago that was quite a ways ago, our first chat. So cool. Yeah, I'll put the link to your website. I love all your products. Actually need to restock a few of them. The ginseng tincture and the M Focus. Those Bacopa capsules are really fun.
Yeah, that's what I took before we chatted. That's funny you brought that
up. That's cool. Yeah, I love Shilajit in all forms. The powder is great. I put that in my coffee, and the resin. I pretty much take all the different forms of it. But
yeah, I need to order some more K2 from you. We just finished. I think I got like 6 or 7 bottles from you last time. It's been a while, and I've been slowly going through them. And Need to order some of that and order some more vitamin E. Love to dissolve it all. Are you still selling the dissolve it all?
Yeah. I still take 3 to 6 every morning, and I find it's really nice when like traveling or flying or like in between meals.
Yeah. All your shit comes with me when I travel, like the gluten savior, like all of it. I'm just like, nom, nom, nom. Especially the vitamin E, though.
Yeah.
Because I started noticing, bro, I had a few spots, from my raw vegan days and going out in the sun. I'm like, fuck, I got lipofuscin on my face. I'm like, what's going on? I need this vitamin E.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I was against extracts, super, synthetics or like super extracts like that, because people are like, only natural vitamin E, you need the tocotrienols with the tocopherols. But everything I've seen is just the 4 tocopherols, mixed tocopherols does the job, gamma and alpha especially. And the tocotrienols, that's kind of like a Barry Tan sales pitch thing. That's just, It's marketing. They're hard to find in foods. Right. I mean, rice bran solubles, they're cool, but they don't do what tocopherols do. So
no, not even close. There's another one too, another plant out there that has a lot of that, the variety you want. I forget what it's called, but you got a good product, man. You got good products, great products, and I'm super grateful for you. And always, anyone does a consult with me, I'm always like, hey, get this stuff. You need it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and I'm always trying to upgrade and think of things. And you inspire me. At some point, I might start selling from our farm here, because Mariah's super soil expert. She wants to test it and do the whole deal, and we'll definitely be testing the conductivity and just small batches of little things, and maybe even I'll do a pine pollen, North Idaho pine pollen. I don't know, just for a season, if we can get gallons.
Yeah, why not? Get that tarp out, bro. Shake that tree. I'm not buying the damn tree shaker. Have you seen those? They fit around the tree and they shake the tree like this. They fit on the back of the Toyota. It's a PTO attachment. So, as long as you got a PTO set up in the back of your tractor, you could, I'm sure it's like 10, 15 grand for it, but
that's why I started a pine pollen company. Yeah. That's cool though. Yeah. I love your stuff in my pancakes. I do that. And sometimes your colostrum, and just definitely use a hand mixer. You can't hand mix it. You need the electric mixer.
Colostrum's full of fat.
Yeah.
It's not other colostrum on the market. It's a full fat, non-irradiated, single source. It's loaded. So
yep, nature's antibiotic, right?
Man, best one ever too.
I love it. Awesome, Charles. Well, yeah, I'll put all the links below, crucial4.com. I'll put your Instagram, and so you're doing consults, you said too?
I've always done consults. My wife does most of them now. I've gotten pretty busy, but yeah, that's been a big part.
Awesome.
So, but mine cost money though. So unless you're serious, I won't do them. So they usually get vetted. I'm not gonna I used to do them and it's just gonna get paid, and then people wouldn't do the protocols. So I'm like I'm super serious. I'm super crucial about the consults. It's like I don't want to waste anyone's time.
Right.
So.
Yep. I love it. Well, awesome, Charles. Well, yeah, anyone down in Texas, go check them out. And thanks for coming on the show again.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Awesome. Stick around as I close out. Thanks, Charles. That is a wrap for today's show. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to Charles Barber. I think he's really a wealth of information. And it's pretty cool. On Charles's website, you can actually purchase A2 grass-fed ghee, heirloom carrots, tomatoes, salad mixes, beets, bell peppers, onions, cucumbers, bok choy, even holy basil. He has rosemary leeks. Looks like he's going to have bone broth pretty soon. So it's pretty cool that we're at the point where we can actually get high quality produce shipped straight to your door. A lot of people are familiar with companies that are doing that with grass-fed beef, but I think it's just as important to have a awesome source of produce. And it's very rare nowadays. A lot of people are shopping, unfortunately, on Amazon for their produce, or Walmart or Target. When you really think about it, a majority of the people are actually getting their food from those sources. And that's really scary, because obviously the food is not going to be of the highest quality when it's mass produced like that. Unfortunately, all the produce we're eating now here in North Idaho is coming from Mexico, so it's all picked unripe, and it definitely affects the way that the food's digested, the nutritional quality, so many aspects. There are a few people up here in this area that have geodesic dome greenhouses, but I think there has to be a lot more. And the benefits to that design is that they're a lot more resistant to snow and wind. Snow will just fall off instead of accumulating on the roof. And like the old greenhouse, I had it collapse multiple times from the weight of the snow. So there's so many more aspects to think about, not only just keeping things warm in there and insulated, but that whole snow load and the harsh elements of being in a northern latitude like this. But it'll be well worth it to have fresh produce, and it'll be off grid. So it will be truly self-sustaining, and the input should be very minimal, maybe buying grain for the goats and their feed, their alfalfa and their grass. But we could recycle a lot. We often give the goat milk to the chickens, and you could actually grind up the eggshells, and that's a calcium source for your soil. And even fish from the lake, you could use fish as an input in your garden, and that is super beneficial for soil health. So there's so many things you could do, and I'll be talking about it more in the future as I delve in and have fun and experiment with it. And we also talk about detox myths and mushroom coffee, how that's trending, the quality of powdered mushroom products, medicinal mushrooms like reishi and chaga, and why quality matters so much. And I asked Charles some Q&A questions from listeners, including the best and most efficient way to compost, what is mushroom compost, how to make magnesium bicarbonate, what's the difference between his white Icelandic salt and the other sea salts that you can buy, or rock salts. I really love what Charles is doing. I love all of his products. I use them quite often, especially the salt I use on all of my food, and just having a high quality sodium chloride to add to your food. You know, if you are hard on cash, then just the non-iodized regular stuff, the Morton's, is completely fine, and it's way better than the pink salts or the colored salts or the gray salts or the red salts. Definitely better to go with the more refined, because people don't think about it, but those impurities show up as the color. Usually those impurities are iron or other heavy metals like cadmium or lead. So his Icelandic salt tastes really good. You just need a little pepper grinder, really useful. His collagen's awesome. His mag bicarb's awesome to make your own magnesium bicarbonate concentrate. He just came out with a fermented noni juice that's really good. I use his pearl powder almost every day as kind of like a teeth coat, especially after coffee. It's very alkalizing and just feels really good in my mouth to kind of coat my mouth in that pearl powder. His pine pollen, both the tincture and the powder, I use a lot. The powder is awesome to use in pancakes. Definitely recommend making your pancakes from scratch. I tried a pancake mix the other day for the first time in several years, and it was horrible. Turned out horrible, tasted horrible, texture was horrible. And they had barley flour in it. I don't know if that played a part, but it was just really bad. So it's better to make your pancake mix from scratch and just buy the soft white wheat flour. That's what I do, and mix that with the separate baking powder, the aluminum-free baking powder, eggs, milk. I use his pine pollen, his colostrum, and that's pretty much it. It's really easy to make them from scratch, and it's good to switch up breakfast instead of just eating eggs every morning forever. It gets kind of boring after a while. His ginseng tonic is also really awesome, and this could be integrated into like my grow pair protocol that I created. Really good, especially for males, to get on these herbs, pine pollen, ginseng, with the animal products, because there definitely is an agenda to feminize the male. That's obvious. And so to counter that, we can utilize herbs and animal nutrition to strengthen the system, kind of restore manhood. The elk antler velvet extract, the tincture, is also awesome in that stack. So if you want to check out Charles's website, it's crucial4.com. And if you use the discount code Blackburn, you'll save a little bit and it'll help support the show. And I recommend all of his products. They're all really great. If you want to check out my other recommended products, you can go to matt-blackburn.com. And these are all the products that I use myself. I have blue blocking glasses up there, EMF blocking clothing, which I recommend if you're exposed to the city often. My favorite lion's mane supplement from Alpha Dynamics. It comes in little satchels or packets of 3,000 milligrams or 3 grams. And I take that every time before I record a show. And that provides a really nice mental boost, especially combined with high quality coffee. And then if my throat feels a little sore from talking a lot, I really like the Protect products from Shen Blossom. And he actually has a Protect cough syrup that actually tastes amazing, but it's instant soothing for the throat. And I like that he uses a fermented barley syrup as the base for a lot of his products and jars. The Presence is one of my favorites. I put that on my ice cream almost every day, and that's the reishi syrup with the spores and pretty much the whole reishi mushroom. It's delicious. It's like an upgraded chocolate for your vanilla ice cream. And my brand, Mitolife, can be found at www.mitolife.co. And we're still working on getting the Panacea Shilajit tablets in stock consistently. For now, it's still limited supply, sells out quite frequently. We just upgraded the servings per box to be 240 instead of 150. So people are really enjoying that. So you get more out of each pack. The oyster extract is in stock, and that recently came back. And that's an awesome source of bioavailable copper, but also zinc, selenium, iodine, and B12. And one bottle of Mitolife oyster actually has the equivalent of 13 pounds of fresh oyster meat. So it's really concentrated nutrition. And these are nutrients that we are often lacking in due to things that I talk about, calcification, lipofuscin, fibrosis, but just plain old nutrient deficiencies as well. We haven't been getting these nutrients consistently in our body for most of our life, especially when it comes to things like copper and selenium. Those two are really deficient. And people that are deficient in selenium generally have an increased risk of cancer. So it's involved in our immune system. It's really the minerals that run the show, as I've talked about numerous times on this podcast. Enzymes require minerals to work. So if you plug in the right minerals in the right ratios and the right forms, then the body will balance out. And it really is as simple as that. So we've been busy adapting to the off-grid life, working on getting better internet up here and a better solar system, and just adapting the washer and the dryer and all of the things to work with the solar has been kind of a fun little project. That's why I've been a little quiet on social media, really busy dialing stuff in here, and it's fun. I'll be sharing more later about the journey. It's definitely a different way of life, but really fulfilling. So thanks so much for listening. New episode every Friday. Some really exciting episodes planned next week. Adam Bergstrom. And the week after that, I'm going to have an episode all about EMFs and EMF mitigation. So that's it. I'll see you guys next week. Stay supercharged.